One. Welcome to the Self-Esteem and Confidence Mindset podcast and YouTube video with me, Johnny Pardo. Today, I have a special guest on the episode. Welcome, Sarah Ramsey. How are you doing, Sarah?
I'm doing great. Excited to be here.
Very excited you're here as well. And it's great that we can connect, and really looking forward to all the value and conversation we're going to have today. So thank you. So
awesome.
Yeah, definitely awesome. So I'll give Sarah a quick introduction before she can add to it. So Sarah K. Ramsey is a toxic relationship specialist and the world's leading expert on how to become toxic person proof. She is a best-selling author of the book Becoming Toxic Person Proof and host of a globally acclaimed podcast. She works with women who have experienced toxic relationships and who remain stuck in a cycle of pain and confusion, transforming their minds and lives by taking back their power, recreating a life they are excited about living, and bringing renewed energy, clarity, and excellence into establishing careers and relationships they love. Oh, fantastic. So, Sarah gave a brief introduction to you there, and really loving your work and all the things you've been doing. So tell us, how did you get into this area?
Well, my favorite question is when people say, oh, did you have a toxic relationship? And I say, that is so nice of you to think there was just one, because I just lived my life as a people pleaser and just thought my self-worth came from what you thought of me, and then what you thought of me, and what you thought of me, and didn't do the confidence work of learning how to trust myself, of learning who I was, of learning how to trust my intuition. And it got me in a world of trouble. And eventually I was in a situation in life where I was driving several of my friends around, completely sober, no prescription drugs, no alcohol, no anything, and blacked out while I was driving and in the middle of an intersection. And it was really terrifying. And it was the stress from all the people pleasing, the stress from trying to be who everyone else needed me to be, and not becoming the voice in my own life. And once I almost hurt people I really loved, I recognized I had to start loving myself.
Okay. Yeah, and so up to that point, it was very much you were looking for external validation your whole life.
Oh, absolutely. And it's scary to say you're right about something sometimes. I think some personality types, they're like, oh, I'm right about this, and I'm right about this. And others of us, we may have confidence. My undergraduate degree was in piano performance. So I was very confident playing the piano, but I may not be confident disagreeing with you on something. So confidence shows up in different ways. I was very confident in singing a song, but not confident in stating my opinion if it disagreed with your opinion. And true confidence comes from knowing who you are and being that person, living in that integrity, no matter who's around you. And if you're always people pleasing, then it's kind of like I was trying on clothes. I was trying on opinions, but I'd say, do you like this blue shirt on me? Do you like this opinion on me? Do you like this personality on me? Do you like this job on me? Do you like this? And they got to be the decision maker in my life. And there were 50 of them. It was, my friends were my decision makers. Different adults in my life were my decision makers. And I kind of forgot to be an adult my own self, even though I was clearly the age of an adult. And I just kept asking other people who I should be instead of discovering who I should be.
Yeah, that makes sense. And yeah, mentally and emotionally, absolutely exhausting, I'd imagine, for you as well.
Absolutely. And some people are mean. I love humans. I believe in the good, but personality disorders are a real thing. And some people love getting to control who you are. And I became some of those people's puppets. And they were playing a game with me that I just thought in a very naive, young way. Everybody's nice. If I do the right thing, they'll be nice back. And I became people's puppets, and that was exhausting as well.
Yeah, yeah. No, I do what you sort of touched on earlier, something you picked up about. Yeah, we could have confidence in different things. Even like some people say, "Oh, I've got no confidence," and it's like, well, that's just the brain generalizing half the time, because it's there is something you're confident in, like whether that's just you can use technology, or you can get up and exercise, or you're confident in your job, but you're set if you haven't got that self-worth or validation from yourself about how much you like yourself. That's going to make it very difficult and exhausting, as it sounds like that's what happened to you when you got to that blackout in the junction. So was that kind of like the turning point for you?
Absolutely.
The commitment to kind of like, I'm going to do this internal work to really like myself, and kind of how did you start that?
Great question. And so I started with learning to give myself permission. Okay. Dear Sarah, I give you permission to see people for who they are rather than who you hope they will be. Right. That's an example. It's a Maya Angelou quote, if you're familiar with her. And she says, see people for who they are. And, when people tell you who they are, believe them. Well, that was something at the time I felt mean. If it's like, if I thought something bad about you, or I hate to use the word bad, but if I saw a personality trait that maybe wasn't quite as honest, quite as loyal, quite as self-aware, I thought I was a bad person for seeing that, rather than saying, well, maybe I'm just kind of seeing who they are. And maybe the problem is that they need to be more self-aware, not that I should pretend and have blinders on my eyes. Because in the conversation around confidence, if you have that cognitive dissonance going on, and you can't see people, their actions are not lining up with their words, it's really hard to start trusting yourself and trusting your own judgment. And so that's the conversations with confidence that I bring, because I think it's, do I like myself? Do I trust myself? Are really two different conversations. And it's hard to like myself if I don't trust myself. So starting the process with, dear Sarah, I give you permission to learn to trust yourself. I give you permission to trust what your eyes are seeing, trust what your ears are hearing, instead of just assuming, well, everyone else is good and doing the right thing, I'm always the problem. Sometimes I am the problem. I'm imperfect. I want to be self-aware to know enough to know the difference. But it's, there, in my book, I say there are toxic people and them. A boss could be, trying to make you confused. An unhealthy love partner could make you feel like you should do all the work of the relationship. An unhealthy parent may make you feel bad for outgrowing them. That exists in our world. I wish it didn't. But being naive to the fact that it did certainly didn't help me trust myself, certainly didn't help me grow, certainly didn't help me with confidence.
So you started building a better relationship and conversation with yourself. That's one of the key things, it sounded like, and having that dialogue, whether it was writing to yourself, but I guess speaking to yourself as well.
So this is funny. I try to save that mean voice in my head for one very specific thing. We get a mean voice in our head. Sarah, you're so stupid for sending out that email with a typo. Sarah, you're so stupid for whatever. And I know for the most part, I won't say I'm perfect at it, but for the most part, I've really broken up with that voice. But I save it for one thing, which is, Sarah, stop doing the same thing over and over again, expecting to get different results. I save that mean voice for that, right? To crack myself into like, wow, Sarah, if you keep doing the same thing, the same things are going to happen. You probably should do something different. So if I tell people, if they have that ugly voice in their head that's beating them down, I say, because sometimes it feels very scary to get rid of that voice. That voice feels like it's keeping them in line and keeping them safe somehow. And so I say, well, let's not get rid of that voice completely. Let's use that voice to serve you rather than tear you down.
Give it a different job. That's what you're saying.
Give it a
Yeah.
different
Yeah.
which is giving action, which is keeping you from mistakes. You know, if we were talking about food and, you know, me cleaning up my own health habit, if I eat, you know, cinnamon cake every night, my neighbor brought me cinnamon cake over recently. I went, oh no. Yeah, if someone is bringing me cinnamon cake and I eat cinnamon cake every day for a month and I gain 10 pounds, I don't like to food shame people, but this is a silly example, you know. And I say, Sarah, if you eat cinnamon cake every day and you're gaining weight, there's a correlation there. You know, I save that mean voice there for, you know, don't do the same things over and over again, expecting to get different results. If you never make sales calls and you'll never have money, save the voice for that. If you never put yourself out there, then no one's going to hear your voice. Save that mean voice for that. Give it a different job.
Yeah, I love that. That's a completely different spin from like perspective I've heard before. So yeah, thanks for sharing that. It's I mean, sort of the conversations I have, like, you know, it can now and then pop up, not as much as it used to before I started on my whole self-esteem and confidence journey within this, when it used to be really bad. It like jump at me for everything. Like it can pop up for the best of us, you know, for like the people at our role models. I'm saying like the people you think are like the best in the world, they say, oh, I get this imposter syndrome, whatever, very common term thrown about now, and they say, oh, I get this voice coming up in my head and stuff like that. But for me, I kind of have that conversation with it. I'm like, okay, I can understand you're upset, but let's calm down and we'll save it now for something more useful. So I like what you're saying in terms of giving it a job, and what you're saying, like doing the same thing over and over again and not getting a good result, like the definition of insanity. I think it's termed as.
Absolutely. And sometimes we all need in our lives a pat on the back. And sometimes we need a pat on the butt that says, come on, start that business. Come on, take the chance. Come on, put yourself out there. Come on, leave that relationship. Come on, whatever it is. And sometimes we need to be gentle with ourselves and say, gosh, you've been through so many hard things. Just rest today. We need both of those voices in our head. And I see people really emphasize one or the other. And I think true wisdom is knowing when to use each.
And would you say, before, obviously now you give that voice, you know, the one which says, come on, we're doing this over and over again, we need to change this behavior now. Did you find before, you sort of, when you were more trying to get people pleasing, the external validation, that voice was often quite negative on you before you started this, and it was quite critical?
Oh, it felt dangerous. Like it felt gonna float away, you know, because with toxic people, they can be that voice. They can be, you know, the mom, you need to be doing this, the dad, you're going to be a failure if you don't this, you know, the spouse, you're so stupid, you're never going to have anything without me. You know, that toxic voice, toxic boss, toxic sibling, that toxic voice can be very harsh. And in some weird way, it can almost feel like it's keeping us safe. Like, you know, my dad told me I was never going to amount to anything. So I'm going to work really hard and keep that voice of my dad's in my head so that I'm going to be driven and I'm going to keep doing it. And that's a very harsh way to live. It's a harsh way to experience life. And it can work for up to a point until you go into adrenal fatigue, until you overwork and collapse, until you have a nervous breakdown, until you have fibromyalgia. You know, and there's all these things that can happen long term when we have heavy stress. And when that voice is what's driving us in our head, there's a lot of stress. You know, in my life, obviously my body just shut down while I was driving. In other people's life, they have health scares, they gain weight, they lose weight, they can't digest their food. You know, it shows up differently. But we all know that a lifetime of constant stress is bad for us. If we have a constant toxic voice in our head telling us how worthless we are, or a constant voice in our life telling us how worthless we are, it's going to shut down our bodies at some point. It just is.
Absolutely. Yeah. The mind body connection, obviously, if it, you know, it's going to affect how you feel as well. And I know we were talking about
affect how you perform. You know, I always joke and I say, say you're in sales and I say, so when you're most miserable, when you're most confused, when you're most upset, is that when you make your best money? And of course they laugh and say, well, of course not. It's like, yeah, so fix it. Right? That's when I say that harsh voice. It's like, hey, if I'm miserable, if I'm drained, if I have no energy, if I'm people pleasing, if I'm trying to take care of everyone other than myself because they're being mean to me about it, am I going to have my best life? Of course not. It makes complete sense. We just don't say it out loud.
And there's a pattern. If you can get that tough love off a coach as well, and they're always doing, you know, that kind of trying to knock you into what you need to do to enhance your life. So you're kind of saying use it like a really, you know, a top coach would do, in terms of, you know, like we're talking about Tony Robbins. Obviously you see, like, he obviously cares a lot for people, but he doesn't mind saying it how it is to someone to get for their greater good. You know, he's using that harsh voice for their own good. Does it cause tears sometimes? And it might do to ourselves, yes, but they're tears to get you to that joy and actually progressing and moving away those barriers. So it sounds like what you're using the voices is how a coach would talk to you a little bit in terms of, right, is this really working? Having those cinnamon cake over and over again?
Cinnamon cake. It is. And I loved what you said about using it as a coach, because we all have to learn how to lead ourselves. But the best coaches get us to perform at our best selves. Toxic voices get us afraid, get us scared, get us stuck, get us confused. So when you're using that voice and that language to be less confused, to make more money, to have more success, to have more confidence, to have more happiness in our lives, versus a toxic voice, which is like, you're so stupid, you're so dumb, you're nothing, you're worthless, you never get this right. They're two shockingly different personalities. So using the voice to build yourself up, absolutely. Using the voice to tear yourself down, no way. No way.
No, absolutely. And I think, you know, a key practice for mine is, as crazy as it sounds, shouting great things at myself every day. And I've been doing that for a long time. It's a few times a day, like whether it's jumping on the trampoline in the background, shouting my incantations out, and things like that. So then I'm like, there's a slight criticism might come in from the external world, and that's the danger. If we've not backed ourselves up with that work, things can knock us off quite easily. But if I receive the odd comment like, oh, I don't like what you're doing or whatever, which is very rare, but like, you know, it's going to happen, especially when you show more of yourself. It's like that your own voice is kind of backed up with the beliefs. But then you've also got that voice that does push you like a coach as well in your head. So I love what you're saying about that. And with the kind of next question I was kind of going to ask you was about your environment. So from that moment when you were changing, when you had that blackout, you realized, you know, the negative talk, the effect of people pleasing, things like that, and caused the physical things in your area. Did you start changing the people around you in your life at all?
I burned my life down. I mean, I set it on fire in a way that it affected. I had a very interwoven world, you know, family business type situation where I describe it as spaghetti and waffles, right? So my life looked like spaghetti. Everything was interwoven. It was very messy, all the noodles, and I needed it to look like waffles. Because what's this one thing I can change? That one square. What's this other one thing I can change? What's this other one thing I can change? And it felt very overwhelming because it was so messy and interconnected, and it did affect so many people. Was it worth it? Yes. Now, did I have sadness at the time? Yes, it was a lot of sadness, but it created growth for everyone. Now it's leading by example, not making myself small so everyone else feels okay. And that's what a toxic relationship is. It's like maybe they're afraid, they want to be controlling, they want you to play the puppet. They want to set the role of your life. And when you disrupt that dynamic, there's going to be a thunder coming. It's going to be messy. It's, there's going to have to be things that happen, but you cannot trick your nervous system. If you tell yourself it's not that bad, things aren't that bad, things are fine, I'm just going to keep playing the puppet, your nervous system will stop digesting your food, develop cancer. Bad things are going to happen. We think we can avoid pain by staying where we are, and it just shows up differently. And it's that pain on the front end of setting your life on fire, of saying, I no longer let people talk to me that way. That I'm not good at putting up with bad behavior anymore. I'm not good at people being mean to me anymore. I'm no longer that person. It's going to change things, but gosh, it's so great on the other end. So great.
Yeah, and a couple of things that kind of sprung up there is often we don't want to go through that short-term pain, even though it's going to, give us more longer-term benefits. As human beings, I think we tend to be like the instant gratification and things like current in our life. We don't want to have the pain or discomfort right now. But I think one of the things for me is things like the Dickens process. If you've sort of been through that, and it's like your pain in your past, present, what it's doing for you now, of like, people pleasing or kind of not respecting yourself, not allowing yourself to do what you do, whether that's holding back yourself in your business, in a relationship, or, not looking after your health, looking at the pain past, present and future, and then actually realizing or allowing yourself to feel it's worse. It's a lot worse than the pain of going through that thing. So I guess that might be something you look at as well, when you kind of looked at what's the pain of not changing as well.
So if I could eradicate a word from the English language, it would be comfort zone, or 2 words. Because we say, oh, we're staying in the comfort zone. Why do we say that? It's hardly ever comfortable. It may be normal, but it's not comfortable. We've just gotten used to the pain. And I wish people would get more afraid of that future pain. And that's really, it was just like, what does the rest of my life look like if I keep doing this? If I don't change, my body's already shutting down in my, late 20s. How much worse is it going to get? I'm a healthy late 20s and my body's shutting down from the stress of people pleasing. What does that look like in 20 years? What does that look like in 30 years? People need to get scared of that. What does it look like if I don't change my life in my late 20s and instead I do it in my late 40s? It's going to be easier in my late 40s? No, of course not. And if I can get people to be afraid of the almost probable certain future if they keep doing what they're doing. Again, it goes back to that mean voice in your head of, if it's not working, stop doing it. It's that same language, and we just don't see it. And there's not enough people talking about it.
Yeah, no, I like how you looked at different time zones as well. What's it going to look like in 10 years time, 30 years time? And yeah, like really experiencing it as well. Because a lot of us, we can get afraid of rejection if we try something new or change something, it's not going to plan, or failing, rejection, from someone else or something else, whatever, or failing, trying something new and it not doing, but actually feeling that it's going to be worse even in the future if you've not done that. So no.
Yeah, just being afraid of things staying the same. We think about being afraid of people changing, and we have more conversations about being afraid of things change. And I want to have more conversations of like, what if things stay the same? Like, let's get afraid of that. And then it's like, whoa, I don't want things to stay the same. I don't want to be 10 pounds overweight forever. I don't want to be alone forever. I don't want to be broke forever. I don't want my business to never grow forever. Let's get afraid of that. And then start to create some change. And then have that little toxic voice yelling at us. It's going to be terrible if you're, overweight and alone and broke and haven't ever started your business. I've written a book and people say, oh, I just wish I could write a book. And, I always joke, it's kind of like, well, I'm really special. You know, God came down. I have more than 24 hours in a day. You only have 24 hours in a day, but I could have 32, and that's how I was able to pull it off. You know, it's funny. It's a joke, but it's, well, why haven't you written a book? I don't have more hours. I don't have more skills. I work to expand the skills that I have. I work to expand the gifts that I'm given. But more people are special. But some people just take action on it. And some people get afraid if things change, and others get afraid if things stay the same. That's the difference maker.
Yeah. I love what you said about, I have 32 hours. I'm special. I cheated.
Yeah, I make, you know, I work out because, you know, I have an extra hour in the day that gives me that space to work out. I have a, you know, time is the one unilateral, we all have the same amount of hours in the day. Now, some of us have different responsibilities, right? But we all have the same amount of time, and we can choose to do with it what we choose to do with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I always like emphasize, yeah, like you say, we've got different responsibilities. So like, you know, like there's might be a single mom of 3 kids who's working a full-time job and growing a business. I've seen stories out there of exceptional, like inspirational examples of that happening. Or you could be, you know, a guy in his, you know, 20s or 30s, and he's not married or something, but he's just very career focused. And, you know, they can have different responsibilities slightly. They're probably both career focused or business focused, but we've all got different responsibilities. But often it's what we do with that time, which is absolutely key. So I'm glad you outlined that, and it can shock us sometimes. It's like, oh, I've used like how many hours on my phone or whatever, and I'm guilty of that sometimes. So
well, we all are. And I think it's the picking yourself back up. You know, I've wasted time on my phone. I've wasted time watching a Netflix series. And sometimes I finish a Netflix series or something, and I'll go, oh my gosh, did I really invest that much time in that? Oh, you know, it's like, but it's fine. And when, again, it's, you hear the like, oh, did I really do that? Versus, gosh, Sarah, you're so stupid. Why did you waste that much time? I mean, did you hear the difference in those languages? Now, if I then decide to start another Netflix series, maybe at that point the voice would come in and say, Sarah, you know, you need to get to your next book, or get to this, or get to the next client. Maybe that piece, but just confidence is the rebuilding. Confidence is how quickly I can make a mistake. It's not making a mistake. It's how quickly I can rebound from it.
If we you know, if we go through like worried about making mistakes, we're not gonna make much movement, because everyone's made a mistake. If you use the examples of the, you know, some of your role models you might have out there, most of them like failed. A very cliche example, but there's always the Michael Jordan quote, when he's like quoted how many times he's missed a shot. Babe Ruth, I think, got hit most, like, kind of, I'm not a big baseball guy, but
yeah, it's like he won or something too. Yeah,
ridiculous amount of strikeouts, as the term is in baseball, and then but like the most home runs and things like that. And it's, you know, it's just examples like that are true. I don't know. I was listening to Jamie Kern Lima earlier, actually, in her book on Believe It, and talking about like how many times she got rejected. And it's just, yeah, I think we're scared to like not make a mistake, but it's about the bouncing back. So I'm really glad you said that point, actually. The confidence is actually coming back and having trust. And again, you're talking about patting yourself on the back. That's something I always encourage people to do, even though as matter as how silly or stupid it sounds, it's more stupid not to, because, you know, you're going to be with you for a lot of your life, all of your life. So, you know, building that good relationship by praising you, it's really good. And that's going to build your confidence, especially when you're knocking yourself down. But you can use that voice to its advantage, like you're saying, to say, come on, we're doing this, it's not helping. So,
again, pat yourself on the back sometimes, pat yourself on the butt sometimes, because we don't want to pat ourselves on the back so much to say, because we're almost having this other swing in like the healing industry of like, well, you're okay, you're wonderful, you're amazing. And yes, you are. Like the essence of your humanity is amazing. But would you be more amazing if you trusted yourself more? Would you be more amazing if you took that chance? Would you be more amazing if you left that relationship? Would you be more amazing if you left that job? Would you be more amazing if you started that job? Would you be more amazing? And when we create that change in our life, we can be kind. We don't have to beat ourselves up to make a change, but sometimes we need a kickstart. Again, I've so many people, oh, it's amazing you wrote a book. I wish I could. Well, you can. You can start a business. You can start a job. You can do those things. Take action on it. Take action on it. Take action on it. I loved your podcast that start overdoing instead of overthinking. And that's the change in relationships too, in toxic relationships. Toxic people make you feel like you're helpless. They make you feel like you're frozen. They make you feel like you're stuck. But you have the power. Like, you are the power source of your own life. You can do something different. After a toxic relationship, people have learned helplessness sometimes, which is they just stop believing in themselves. It's the ultimate act of not confidence. And that's part of the rebuilding. The bounce back after a toxic relationship is believing yourself again, believing who you are again, trusting yourself again, which we talked about before, and then knowing when to kick yourself in the butt. It's time to eat healthy. It's time to exercise. It's time to start the business. It's time to make that phone call. It's time to not make that phone call, and really learning to lead yourself. Because I see people, sometimes we get in toxic relationships because there are toxic people. That just exists. But sometimes if we don't have that strong self framework, we look for people who appear to have a very strong framework, but then they're bullies sometimes. You should do this. You should do this. And it feels like, oh, good. Now I know what to do. But it's someone else telling you what to do, rather than that springing up from your own self-worth and your own self-image and your own self-purpose. You end up fulfilling the toxic person's purpose and becoming their puppet, rather than really knowing who you are.
Yeah. And again, comes down to that. There's not enough work on yourself, and you're used to hearing that external voice, it sounds like, from you, from your kind of experience of working with individuals. So what are some of the, obviously without getting into the details of anything, what are some of the main challenges you see when you're working with people in your area? I mean, obviously you said sort of coming out of toxic relationships, sometimes that voice, they're not used to kind of having that good voice or control over themselves. But what are some of the main challenges you see?
I love this question. So my next book is going to be on problem solving skills. Okay. When we have a toxic person, we get really confused. Toxic boss, toxic mother, toxic sister. It creates this flurry in our head, or spaghetti. And it's just confusing. And we forget to become our own best problem solvers. Okay. So one of the first things I work with people on is differentiating gravity thinking, abstract thinking, or actionable thinking. Okay. And say we'll use the example of a toxic boss. Okay. So someone comes and they say, oh, my boss is terrible. My boss is terrible. My boss is terrible. And it's like, yeah, your boss is terrible. I believe you, right? But changing someone else's behavior is like trying to change gravity. You can jump as hard as you want. You're not going to jump to the sky and touch the stars. And it's not because of your lack of effort of jumping. It's because you have a gravity problem. Sometimes there are healthy people and we can communicate with them, and we can develop new communication styles and work into a relationship with them. But if someone is a 55-year-old man who hasn't figured out how to take turns, you changing them is like trying to change gravity. They've been hearing that they should take turns since they were 5. If they're 55 and you work for them and they don't know how to take turns, and it's always your fault, it's always your fault, it's always your fault, it's always your fault. They are a gravity problem. Changing their behavior is a gravity problem. Okay. Then they go into abstract thinking. Why do you think they did that in their childhood? What do you think happened in my childhood for me to put up with this? What do you think is happening here? Why do you think it bothers me so much? Why do you think I'm triggered by that? Why do you think and it's like circle, 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 circle. And really, you may just need to move to a different department in your job because you're working for a dickhead. But you see the years people spend being angry about a gravity problem, getting therapy for an abstract problem, and avoiding taking action on it. And that's even if you just start the journey of categorizing those things. When I say my mother should act better, okay? Is your mother a gravity problem, an abstract problem, or an actionable problem? And it's like, well, okay, my mother's a gravity problem. She's not going to change. Okay, then could you, if someone has a really toxic family, I've talked about in holidays, sometimes it can be good to sit at the kids' table, and you could be sitting there with a holiday at the kids' table, and the kids are having a good time, and you're happy, and there's like a shield, a barrier from your mother saying, why aren't you married yet? Why aren't you this? Why did you quit that job? Why did you this? And you can leave a family function feeling very torn down and unsettled. You could sit at the kid table and you have a good time and you love your cousins. You laugh and you giggle. That's an actionable solution to a gravity problem. Okay. But what most people do is go to therapy. And I'm not against therapy. I'm not against therapy. I don't want people to hear that. But this is where this language comes up. Why do you think my mom bothers me so bad? Why do you think this is going to happen? Why do you think this is, why do you think I do this every year to myself? Why do you think I don't like my job because of this? Why do you think I'm not doing what my mom wants? Like they go into this, like, it sounds exhausting even as I say it. But pay attention to people's conversations. And they're talking about gravity or they're talking about abstract thinking. And so my favorite question to say is, what problem are you trying to solve? My mom's such a jerk, blah, 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 blah. What problem are you trying to solve? Oh, okay. I want to be able to leave my holiday feeling good about myself. Okay, you could do that. Now, sometimes I may say, I want my mother to have a different personality. That's a gravity problem, right? We can't do anything about that. But even getting into that language and that idea of problem solving builds confidence. You don't feel like a helpless participator in your own life. Changes everything.
I love that gravity, abstract, and action thinking concept. Definitely gonna have to grab your book. That new book sounds so good. And it kind of reminds me of the circle of influence and the circle of concern, which I remember first discovering in The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey, which was very much on like quite a lot of productivity in that book. But I definitely always relate it to how we kind of feel and our moods and like our confidence. Because I'd say from my own experience, and it sounds like you might have experienced the same, but a lot of us focus on what we can't control rather than what we can influence or we can actually do as an action. And so I love the quality question: what problem are you trying to solve? And I guess sometimes you might have to ask that question a couple of times to actually get a proper answer.
Have you seen the 7 layers deep exercise? Where it's like, why do you want to be successful? Why do you want to be successful? Why do you want to be successful? Yeah. Dean Graziosi does that. He partnered with Tony. But you can ask that question too. What problem am I trying to solve? What problem am I really trying to solve? What problem am I really trying to solve? And get deep. There was a girl she kept attracting emotionally unavailable men. And I said, why are you more attracted to emotionally unavailable men than healthy men? These healthy guys want to date you. And she said, she did that exercise. What problem am I trying to solve? What problem am I trying to solve? And she said, if they're emotionally unavailable, then I don't have to worry about them truly seeing me for who I am. And if they see the ugly insides, they'll abandon me. And so as long as I'm with emotionally unavailable men, I never have to be abandoned. And it's like, it's huge. And it was a 5-minute process rather than 5 years in therapy. And I'm not against therapy. I hope no one hears me saying that. I just want to get some more effective tools in people's hands so they're not always on this spin cycle of fighting gravity or abstract thinking.
Yeah, I'd agree. And I've done a bit of both. I do loads and loads of coaching. I don't really have any therapy or anything at the moment, but I've done it before and sort of that kind of thing briefly. And it's quite useful to a degree to open up a little bit of, or a bit of self-awareness and understand yourself a bit more, but kind of getting into that action thinking of what do I need to do and understanding where you are, but moving forward with it, with the action thinking as you're discussing. So yeah, totally agree and understand what you're saying there.
Yeah, it's awesome. And even that concept of spaghetti and waffles too, like if you kind of brain dump and it's like, well, I'm worried about my mother saying this, and then my uncle getting mad at me about this, and then if I don't come to family dinner, then this will happen. And that you can kind of brain dump and then like think about taking it each noodle and putting it in a waffle square. Okay, what am I going to say to my mother? What am I going to say to my uncle? How am I going to manage my stress before that day? How am I going to leave feeling confident? How will I know I was successful? Like taking it, because you can create action plans. What am I going to say to my mother? There's an action you can take on that. How am I going to manage my nerves? There's an action you can take on that. And it's exhausting when it's just like, well, just noodles. You just imagine noodles, and I love spaghetti, but you just imagine this like mess. And when people start talking about their problems, it's like, whoa, this feels like a big mess. How do you even begin to solve it? Well, you have to solve somewhere. If you stay the same place, you're going to end up in the same place. So breaking it into those waffle squares, what's one thing I can take action on? And starting with that, if the problem feels too large. And then recognizing, is this a gravity problem, abstract, or actionable? And holding on to those actionable problems, whatever you can do, and then figuring out what you are going to do, because it's not just figuring out what you should take action on, it's actually doing it.
Yeah, making it a must on certain things rather than, just the idea. So no, that's great. I'm really looking forward to that book coming out. just that concept as well, and the way you've kind of explained that a little bit. So kind of obviously given us some great value today, but what is there anything else you would kind of share from what you've kind of learned from working with people and working on yourself in terms of building up your confidence from perhaps being knocked back from toxic people?
Yeah, so I definitely think action is the best plan for building confidence, even if it's, we have affirmations, and I have already I meditate nearly every day. I talk well about myself. I have reminders in my phone. I am not against affirmation, but true confidence comes from trusting yourself. It's from saying, I'm going to do this and I'm going to follow through. I'm someone who follows through on myself. I'm someone who chooses myself. I'm someone who I say I'm going to do something and I do it. I'm someone who tries things and figures them out. Like that is so different than I look good in these jeans, right? Or, I'm beautiful. I am smart. I am kind. I think I am smart. And here's why. Because when I said I was going to do something, I did it. When I made a promise to myself, I followed through. When I picked up on that person, I thought they were a little bit off and I was right. This is a very drastically different conversation around confidence than I feel good when I get fixed up and go out on a date. I do feel good when I get fixed up and go out on a date. I'm actually a representative for the Mrs. America, and I'm a speaker this Saturday or Friday. This Friday, I'm a speaker for the Mrs. America Association. So, I'm going to look good that day. That's completely different than I have confidence in being a good communicator and studying well. And so I know when I speak, I'm going to give them words of wisdom that they will remember. They will remember what I say because I'm a good communicator. Totally different confidence. Totally different. Right? And finding more of those ways. I'm not nervous about speaking. I wasn't nervous before this because I trust myself. I've done the work. I've done the research. I've done the study. I've had the conversations. So when you ask me a question, I'm going to be able to pull out the answer because I trust myself to pull out the answer and the right answer. And that's a totally different piece of confidence than just like feeling good about how quick you ran the mile that day. Both are important. It's good to run a mile. It's good to feel good in how you look. But it's good to trust yourself. It's good to trust your judgment.
Yeah. And yeah, I really like that, because I think what you said, do both. And when we talk to ourselves well, and like you said about affirmations, I prefer more incantations when you're like saying stuff with emotion, so it can really get on board, rather than I'm happy. Like, if you're listening to that, it's like, sorry, if you're listening to that, I had like a very blank expression. But
Yes.
it's like, I'm happy. You probably, the sound, even when I say smile and say that, it's like, I'm happy. Like you can notice the sound, even if you're listening to this. Obviously, so I'm keen of putting movement and intensity into it. So that's, I agree that that's like one piece, but the trust piece is the other side, like you say. And I think this was really well described by, I never say his name, but long name, Nick. I don't know if you know him, Stanston Stover. He's basically a bodybuilder who's got he hasn't got any legs. He's got half an arm, and he's
yes.
really inspirational young guy. And he described it really well, that he builds his confidence through making contracts to himself. And I know he's not the first person, but it's just the way he described it, was the way he says he's going to do something and he'll follow through. But if you were to say to someone else, your friend, we'll meet for dinner at 8:00, and you don't show up, how many times is your friend going to trust you? Well, it's the same when you're talking to ourselves, but we don't think of it like that. It's like, I'm going to commit to, working out today, and you're like, I'll do it tomorrow. And you keep doing that. It's like doing that to a friend, like not showing up for them. So I do like what you say about the trust.
And within trying to help you become toxic person proof, we haven't talked as much about that, but it's definitely my work.
Yeah.
If I am someone who follows through on myself, and a toxic person tries to knock me off course, I'm so sure of myself and my course that I'm like, they're trying to make me feel small. They're trying to knock me off course. They're trying to be the voice in my life rather than trying to enhance my voice. Something's wrong. Okay, that's good data for me. I'm just going to tread carefully with that. Versus we want a list of red flags. If someone, people say, where are all the good guys? And I said, the government has a secret service, and at 2:00 on Thursdays at Starbucks in Manhattan, all the good guys that congregate right there. There's like, they've all been vetted, and the government, and it's like, it sounds ridiculous, but it's like, if you don't trust yourself, how are you going to find someone to trust? You have to learn that confidence of trusting yourself first, trusting your own intuition, trusting your own judgment, showing up for yourself, building that trust in yourself. So when someone tries to get you not to trust yourself, you remember what that feels like. And it's like, this happened recently. I had someone I asked for problem solving examples from my book. I said, I'm looking for examples of problems at work. So send me some examples of problems you have at work. And the person wanted to send me their problem solving skills. And or how they solved a problem. Is like, hey, I think you should know how I solve a problem. And I was like, why do I need to know how you solved a problem? You're not my market research. Like, I'm not in an ugly way, but I didn't ask you to be an expert witness in my book. I asked you for problems. And that was a very big red flag for me, right? I asked you, and I had put a Facebook post about it, and they reached out. I didn't ask them specifically, but then their feedback was, hey, let me be an expert in your life. And I was like, oh, no. I have lots of experts in my life, but I choose them. They don't volunteer. And it felt very unsettled. It was very concerning, and not in a huge way, because I just went, nope, this is not what's going to happen. but I asked, they gave me something more than I asked for. And that's the very little subtle things that you start to pick up on being toxic person proof. And it would be very easy for me to say, well, they just didn't mean it. It was a communication issue. Maybe it was, but maybe it's something to take notice of, to make sure. Because if I start that tunnel, and then here it's like, whoa, maybe why don't you write the book? And it's like, if you want to write a book about problem solving skills, your problem solving skills, you should. Mine are tried and tested over the last several years with other people, including, graduates from some of the in Cambridge, some of the world's best colleges, right? I don't need you to tell me how to help problem solve. I needed you for examples. But toxic people, I'm not calling this person toxic, but it was something to keep notice of, because it was very concerning that they were like, great, what a great opportunity for me to be the expert in your life, and you asked me advice without you asking me for advice. Do you see that subtlety? But it happens all the time, and people miss it. And they're looking for a red flag list as clear as the bell, like only wears red t-shirts or only whatever. And it's just not that easy. It's those subtleties of noticing your own subtleties in your life and taking action on them. There was a step back. You were trying to become the expert in my life when I didn't ask. There's a step back. There's a hard step back at this point. So little things, but pay attention. You'll notice it in your life. And I think your listeners will as well.
Yeah, definitely. Being aware of those things. And I think sometimes we can eat, and like kind of, I guess that relates to when people have been in those toxic relationships as well, when like from the outside you might be able, or friends and family might be able to see the person's toxic for someone, but the person can't see it in front of their face because emotions get in the way. And that kind of, I guess you might experience that a little bit in your work as well, sometimes when they've not realized it for years.
And I think that wisdom is part of what makes you toxic person proof. If in my own life, if I'm emotionally, the closer I am to someone, the more likely I am to miss it. Okay. Even with, this is what I do, even being a world expert in this, even with all the work I do, I will never not be a human.
Yeah.
I will never not be a human. And when I lie to myself and make myself, oh, I'm better, I'm bigger than being a human, I'm a superhero, you've seen that so many times. That's when this fall comes. That's when people get off track. But when it's like, I'm a human, if I'm emotionally connected to someone, I'm going to be more likely to miss it. Now, I still think I'm really good at this, but I think sometimes we think becoming toxic person proof means being superhuman. And in reality, it's accepting that when you are emotionally connected to something, you are more likely to miss it. So that's when you need to be extra careful. That's when you need to pay extra attention, not less.
Yeah, totally. We are all human. I love what you said there. So, just being really, really self-aware and aware sort of outside of yourself as well, I guess what you're saying. So, thank you so much for sharing that wisdom, Sarah. And, it's really good how all the work you're doing for like the bulletproof and helping people feel great about themselves, because we do get these challenging, all sorts of different relationships, not just intimate, I guess, but like friends and family and things like that in our life that can knock us back. So it's really great to hear your perspective on things today in terms of that side of things. And certainly really, really enjoy particularly what we talked about, the gravity, abstract thinking and action thinking. So I think that's a key takeaway for today. What if people want to find out more about you, well, they will want to find out more about you and connect with you, where can they find you?
So they can check out my book, Becoming Toxic Person Proof. Check out my podcast, Toxic Person Proof, which, not to be annoying with all the language, but it's just easy, right? It's like, I want to become toxic person proof. Buy the book, listen to the podcast. And you can check out my Facebook. Is just Sarah K. Ramsey. Bounce Back is my page on Facebook, and then on Instagram at Bounce Back.
Bounce Back, brilliant. And we'll connect all of those into the links in the description as well. So when people want to check you out, they can just find those pages there. But Sarah, thank you so much for giving so much value today, and really looking forward to looking into more of your work, particularly around this second book when it comes out. It's always great to meet a fellow writer and podcaster as well. And it's been a great conversation today. So thank you so much for coming on.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Sarah. And we will catch you in the next episode.